Joe Gemma, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm excited to be here, thanks. I'm really honored you invited me for this discussion. Thanks.
Absolutely. You are the Chief Revenue Officer at Wauseon Machine, and you're on the A3 Robotics Technology Strategy Board. Thank you so much for all of your contributions to A3 over the years. As we look back and celebrate our 50th anniversary this year, we're remembering and regaling some of the key moments that have happened in robotics and automation in the last 50 years. In your own career, what stands out as some really pivotal moments?
Interesting question. Certainly a lot's happened, right? Obviously through the 50 years. I think one of the things that really sticks out for me in that regard is, the early days of the idea of automation excited a lot of people, a lot of companies, that this was going to solve a lot of problems. Lights out manufacturing, et cetera. In those early days, it didn't quite work out the way they expected. So it hasn't been all positive things. And in fact, it really, and I think you probably heard from some others that there was some kind of dark times, so to speak, in the industry because it didn't live up to those expectations. And some engineers kind of staked their careers on that because they went into the bosses saying, hey, we're going to help this, and I understand automation, and we're going to do a lights out manufacturing process. And it wasn't, and a big part of that was the software. And I'd say, so on the positive side, the big change that's really impacted that has been the software. It's kind of analogous to the average consumer, the dial phone compared to the portable phones we carry around today, right? They're monster computers in our pocket, and it's the same thing. That software's really helped. I mean, it's really one of the pivotal things, I'd say, in the last 50 years that has really had a tremendous impact to be able to move automation forward across so many different areas.
Absolutely. And given your leadership on the A3 board and in various industry associations, include the former RIA, how do you see collaboration between companies and industry associations shaping the future of automation?
Another interesting question. I certainly think that, all those things need to work together, including government. So government, industry, education, working together, and the associations. And I think part of the way we can, in collaborating that way, we help to make sure there's some standard strategies across the world, there's understanding of the technologies. So one of the things that the associations do in helping companies work in that way is like safety structures around that. And even more now, it's moving towards not just what we tend to call the industrial world of robotics, but even service robotics. And it's an area where we can, as an association, work with companies, help support so that, again, we're keeping humans safe, but allowing that technology to be part of our everyday lives. I really think that's an area where more and more we'll see the associations combining, I'll say, efforts with industry, and again, education too, but certainly industries that bring those things forward.
You have been serving on the board of directors for a couple years now. Why is it so important for you to give back to the industry in this way?
I hope it's actually true of all of us, right? We're passionate about what we do, but we really believe that this helps the human being to improve our lives. A lot of things, and you hear the words over and over again, dirty, dark, and dangerous. There's a lot of things, though. It gives people opportunities to upskill, to learn about different technologies, and then apply those technologies. And even in our own, lives, personal lives, when we think about things like the vacuum cleaner, right? It gives us an opportunity to help lead that in terms of supporting that type of technology. So in doing that, I hope that we're helping our whole industry get visibility in the general public to see the benefits of what that does. And even to the industry itself, the other companies, that by collaborating together, we can really support technology advancement. And being part of the A3 and the IFR, we're trying to do that. So there's more of a collaboration of efforts rather than individual silos. And I think really is powerful for us going forward.
Why you in particular did you get excited about working in automation? What first caught your interest in robotics?
It was a little bit by luck. Early in my career, I worked for a company that was more of an engineering type role, and somebody I knew had a company, or was part of a company that was working in or trying to work in the burgeoning opportunity in automation. And they were looking for somebody that could help a little bit more from a project management perspective, but could also have some technical understanding, because it was the earlier stages still of what the technology looked like from then. I mean, I'm not the 1960s, but still even in the early 80s, it was still a new technology. And so it was really by luck that that person reached out and said, you might be a fit for this. I got really excited about what I saw that the potential future could be, as in today. I mean, you know, it's interesting because it's that innovation, the cycle of innovation is just rapidly dynamic today. In those early stages, it was kind of that same energy. So it was easy to get excited about the, you know, the idea of the technology, robotics. Of course, that was the buzzword. It still is today a little bit, but the robotics and how it could impact us. And so it was an exciting thing as a young person in your career to get involved in something like that, to see, wow, this is the future. And you know, I know we say the future is now, the future is never now. It's always the future, right? But it was really that kind of exciting vision.
It is. It's so exciting. And everyone that I talk to in these conversations, but also just our membership, people are really passionate and excited about automation. And I don't think that there's that same level of passion in other industries. So I think that's really special. As you've grown in your own career and become a leader, both in your own companies and for the association, what do you think makes a good leader, and what is your leadership philosophy?
That's kind, because you're kind of alluding to the fact that I might be a good leader. I'm not sure I am. But I think one of the things that really people value is a collaborative perspective. You know, getting other people's perspectives and implementing that, giving them a voice in what you do. I think also humor. I think humor is part of it, because it's, you know, what we do can be, as in our personal lives, our work lives, can be stressful. Having a little humor in our lives can be beneficial too. It kind of helps us to move forward and kind of build relationships. So I think two things is collaborative is really important in getting feedback. You know, I mentioned earlier silos. Silos is not really a great way to get energy together. And I think building relationships, you know, getting trust with one another. In fact, I like to say, even in I've been very fortunate in my career, but I was never the leader. We were always a team. It was people as a team that was successful. And when there are things that there are challenges, we address the challenges together. It wasn't any individual, you know, it was your challenge, it's our challenge. So I think those are things that really help, I'll say, success in the types of things we do. I hate to say leadership, because we should all be kind of collaborative leaders together.
That's beautiful. I love that. In your experience with IFR and RIA A3, you mentioned enhanced visibility on the national and global stage. How does this visibility translate into business advantages for both the associations and the companies?
That's a great question. And more, I think it's really having a benefit, particularly around policies. Certainly some national policies here in the United States, when we talk about that, even globally, some of the policies on what that means. I mentioned earlier, safety is certainly one of them, but policies of how, you know, support automation, support training in those technologies, supporting even, you know, tax incentives to invest in the technologies, invest in the people that can be part of the technology. And I think that's one of the things we can do, continue to do as associations, is help. That helps the companies, helps the countries themselves, and it helps the workforce. So I think there's a lot of things we can do in that regard to support that.
Now you're at Wauseon Machine. It's evolved from a small contract machine shop into a multifaceted organization with a focus on tool development, machine building, and automation. Can you just talk about the strategic decisions that provided that growth opportunity?
You did your homework, thanks. Yeah, so Wauseon was born, it was a family company type of structure, and they grew, and as they grew, it was more, I'll say, brute force almost, in a particular space that they had some history and so some customer base. When we, and again, I don't want to take the credit, Scott Anier, who's our CEO, has really done a fabulous job of building a structure around the organization to build it, bring it to that next level, with automation being a key component of where we see that growth. And again, you know, reason we've had success growing this organization is there aren't any silos in our organization. It's a very flat structure in terms of collaborating across all the business areas. As you mentioned, it's three distinct business areas, but not really distinct in that, you know, there's a P&L responsibility, but not distinct in that we share each other's successes and resources and support and of course pain, and how do we help each other. So I think that's really has been a positive effort there, is building that structure. And again, it was a family-held company, so that's a positive thing for sure, because it grew and it employed people in the area. we're growing because we're actually building a structure now around the organization to go to a next level. And we're getting that next level because of that structure and the collaboration, I'll use that word again, collaboration across the groups.
And it always starts with that good foundation, though. Yeah. Considering your experience working in the robotics industry in France and in Europe, how did those cultural differences impact your approach to business strategies?
Another great question. I will tell you that really, and I encourage people in their careers, if they have opportunities to work abroad or live abroad in those perspectives, gives you a really different view of what the world is like. And so it's a great question. I mean, even things like, I spent a lot of time kind of developing our organization in China. And in China, culturally, they don't start a business meeting as a business meeting. Start a business meeting to kind of get to know you. Let's have a cup of tea. It's a different way to start to begin a relationship. They want relationships too, just like our culture in America is different. France is another way, very, very, I'll say supportive once they get to know you, but they like in America, we tend to say hello on the street even if we don't know you. In France, if you say bonjour, they look at you like, do I know you?
Excuse
Why
me?
are you saying hello? So it's kind of understanding that there are subtle differences in that in the business. And again, in France, when you greet someone, it's expected you give them a handshake and say hello. And it's touching in a completely different way, right? So so to build those trust, that relationships, and I really believe that's a real value in growing your business, growing your own network, growing your own career, is understanding what that's like from a culture, different cultures. And it translates into the business perspective. It's not just in your personal life.
That's so cool. That'd be really fun to live abroad.
Do it if you
sure
have that
I
opportunity.
will, for sure. Where were you in France? In Paris or?
Almost almost in a dream place because it's a valley in the French Alps with literally the Alps all around you at a lake, snow covered. So even in the summertime, you see Mont Blanc with the
Wow.
snow cover at the top. It was really just a beautiful place to live. I joke about it, but there were several times walking down the street with the baguette under my pinching myself saying, am I really living here? It's
Wow.
almost storybook in that sense.
It sounds like a dream.
It really was. I could never describe how beautiful it was.
I've seen pictures of this area in the world, and it's on my bucket list.
There you go.
Just wrapping up here, as we look ahead, what are some of the emerging technologies that you're excited about or that you think are really going to be impactful in this industry?
So in the near future, I'd say one of the really disruptive technologies we've recently seen is mobile platforms. And I really think that's also going to have long-term, but I really think it's one of the more disruptive technologies that we've seen in recent years. When I talked about the software and how that impacted our industry, mobile platforms gives us an opportunity to, as I described it, kind of the automation to a process. Rather, we used to have to bring the process to the automation. A good example is the automotive. People recognize, all right? So we'd bring the car, that body, to a location and do something. Drill a hole, weld it, put a seat in, et cetera. Today we can actually, because of mobile platforms, no matter what the product looks like, and that's why agriculture and other areas, we can bring the process, the automation to the process. So it's really a game changer, really disruption I think we'll see here in the near future and continue to grow in areas like construction, agriculture. A more long-term future, I mean, there's certainly a lot of things. As I said, such cycle of innovations accelerating so fast, it's almost, but AI for certainly, we'll certainly hear more about that, but things like, one of the recent speakers talked about grasping and understanding what that might be. And in real time, to picking strawberries and recognizing that, okay, that they have different shapes. It can take that information, AI, go back and redesign a gripper and go back and it's not, harvesting the product. So I think that the AI will have more and more, and then Industry 4.0, so the connectivity of what that means. I think that's now and going future is becoming more of, from the human aspect, kind of the central nervous system. But it's also critical to manage that properly because just like our central nervous system, if something goes awry, it can be really a challenge for us as humans. It's the same thing in the production environment. So I think that's the thing. The connectivity is the thing that's really critical of us going forward and today and going forward.
It is. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your dedication to this industry and to our association. I hope we'll get to talk again in the future.
I look forward, and again, thank you for having me here. I'm really honored, humbled that you would ask me to do this. Thank you.